Welcome, everyone. We're going to build our typographic animated video today. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks and get you started in the right direction so you can make your own. This is primarily for my students, and we're doing this for a class project. So let me head over to Brave browser here, and this is from my class. And this is the example video that I'm going to show you. This was a sample I did for class to kind of show you what you could do. The gist of this video is we are going to do a video 30 to 60 seconds that educates viewers on how they could improve their health. Could be physical health, mental health, they interact with each other, relationship health. So I chose an article that I found from Harvard University, and it kind of outlined how getting outdoors can make you healthier, and I titled it 8 Outdoor Activities to Improve Your Health. This will be a typographic heavy video where you'll still have some videos in here, but we're going to animate some type and kind of practice our type skills and designing with type. So this is what the video that I'm going to demonstrate looks like. All right, and then a little bit of sunshine at the end there. So we open up After Effects, and you will usually get this window. You might get a window that looks like this as well, where you have New Project, Open Project. You can click on New Project if you want. I usually just close this window and I start in here. So I'm going to kind of reduce the size of my window here, and I'm going to go, and you can see on a folder on my desktop, I have all of my relevant files. Excuse me. All of my relevant files. I have 2 sound files. This I found from Bensound, and another sound that of the stream that I found on orangefreesounds.com. The sounds are MP3 files. And then from pexels.com, you can also use pixabay.com. You can get video. These are all royalty-free videos that we can use, and these are MP4s. So bike riding, a couple walking, these are all the different videos that I use. So I'm just going to take all of these, grab them or highlight them, use your command key if you need to click and select more than one, and I'm going to drag them over into my, if you look up here, it's the project window right here. Drag them in here, and that will add all of these to that. And now all of these have been added, and they're kind of ready to be used in my timeline. So the first thing I usually do once I add everything is you can go up here under Composition, and you can just do New Composition. We'll build a new composition. You can also click up here. I want you to have multiple ways, I guess, to do it. So click New Composition, and you'll get your composition settings. So I can title mine 8 Outdoor Activities, if I can spell that right. 8 Outdoor Activities. And for this, I want to make something that is a square that can be used in almost any social media. So I'm going to select 1080 for my width and 1080 for my height. It's not the end of the world if you want to do this in full HD widescreen and leave it at that 1920, but I'm going to unlock the aspect ratio and make it a square. Frame rate, I want 30 pixels per second. 30 frames per second here. And for the timeline, mine is, it ended up being, I think, like 44 seconds. But if you want to, initially, you could just set this at 30 seconds and put in zeros for the rest of these. I think I just set that for 30 minutes. Sorry. 30. And then leave the background whatever color you want. Click OK. Now you have your timeline here, and you can see the timeline along the bottom here. I'm moving the timeline indicator, the current time indicator here. You can see it goes from 0 over here to 30 seconds, 30s over here. So to get these other pieces down here into the timeline and add them here, what I like to do is just take one at a time. So the top file here that I labeled, or I named 8 outdoor activities, that's your composition. You won't want to do much with that right now. But these individual files, let's just say if I wanted to start off with bike riding, I would just grab this, drag it down here, drop it into the timeline, and then that video appears up here. So in here now is where I can open this up and I can start to do all of my editing and adjusting of what I want it to do. You'll see that this video clip starts at 0. It's about a little bit more than 14 seconds here. So that's as long as it goes. I won't use all of that, but I could if I wanted to. And I can play around with this. If I scrub through, you'll see the video play. And you can see that this is 2 people kind of bike riding down a country path. If I make this a little bit smaller, just by clicking on the corner, now you have to hold your shift key down so it doesn't get too wonky looking. Hold your shift key down, it'll maintain its proportions. But I might want to have a little more of this visible. Notice how it draws from the center. That's because you have your center point right here, the anchor point. If you go up here to your pan behind or your anchor point tool, click on that, you can move this. So if I move it up here to the corner, and I go back to over here to my selection tool, now it will expand and contract from the point up there in the corner. So I think I want to maybe show about this much. So now if I scrub through, you can see that I see a little bit of that waving flag over here, a little bit of the windmill, one of the cows. Okay, so that's how you open it up, set up your composition, the settings for your composition, get all of your files in here. You might be noticing the only thing that we are missing in here would be all of my text files. So we're going to build our text files in After Effects to give you build your skills doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this and not save it. And I'm going to open up the actual After Effects file. This is my previous file with everything built. So I just double click on this. Once you save your After Effects file, I guess I should have shown you that, but all you have to do is Command S to save. You make your composition, and then you save it as an After Effects project or a .aep. Then you'll get this file. And this file, you just double click it once you've made it, and you will see that this will open up with my composition already in there. So now you see I initially named this composition up here, Better Health, Get Outdoors. Excuse me. So here is my entire file with everything completed in it. So if I take this up here, you can see this is my entire timeline here. Actually, there's even a little bit more down there, it looks like. Yeah, there's even a little bit more. So what you see here in the timeline is all of these layers represent, and I've actually color-coded these, where you can just select all your layers and click on the little tag here, and you can select the color that you want for it, just so I can kind of remind myself which layers are part of a scene. So the first scene that you see with the people riding and kind of the opening scene here with 8 outdoor activities and the video and the blend and the orange, all of that is these, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers make up that first scene. So you can see that the first scene goes from 0 to about 5 seconds. I specifically chose 5 seconds because I thought that was a good time for everyone to read what I had. I only have a few words on the beginning there, The next one, notice it goes to about a little bit less than 10 seconds. So I'm putting about 4.5, 5 seconds in between each scene. I'm leaving 4 to 5 seconds for each scene so that people can read the words. I usually only have no more than 6, 7 words up here, so I think that's enough. Okay, so let's deselect this just by clicking over here in the area that is like gray, and it'll deselect all your layers. But you can see how I have all of these layers chunked together so that the blue is this layer, and this would be for bike riding. And then green, I actually made them the color of the background, so I could, I guess, reference them that way as well. So I have these, looks like I have 6 layers here for gardening, and as you progress through, they transition. So each of these chunks shows how long the layer is going to be visible for. That's what the green shows here. You can adjust these as well. You can just grab them with a little double arrow, and you can determine how far on the timeline they're going to be visible. Okay, so these are each of the chunks, which kind of gives you a nice visual too of seeing when everything is coming up and when it's going to be visible. You might notice at the very bottom I have my audio, which is the music that plays throughout the entire 44 seconds. That goes through, I put it at the bottom because it goes through the entire video. We'll touch on that in a little bit. Okay, so let's go back and drag your current timeline indicator back to the very beginning. And you can see that I need to have text layers up here. Fit this in the box up here. So in order, see these little T's right here? These make, right down here, these T's are text layers. The little stars, those are going to be shapes. It's a shape layer. And it could be the solid that you see here, or it could be something that you draw. It could be the lines in here. These lines are shape layers as well. And if you want to rename these, you simply control click or right click and go down to rename, and you can pretty much name them whatever you want. Okay, so let's just start with something simple. I want to make the 8 here. So up here you have your tool palette. So I'm going to click on the T, which is my type. Make sure I don't have any layers selected. And I'm going to go down here and just kind of click and drag to make a text box. I'll make it a little bit larger than I need to. And in the text box, I'll type 8. Now, it just so happens that I was making this before, so it came up exactly the same size. But if it was something else, over here is where you would change the typeface. So I could make it really whatever I want for the type. Click right up here. The way you open these is you just click on the top to open and close them. So let's go down, and I like that Avenir. This is a nice typeface, and then I believe I chose heavy. No, I chose black. Okay, and then for the size, you can either click in here to type the size, or you can use the slider and increase or decrease the size. You have leading controls over here, some spacing and kerning controls if you'd like as well. And also in here I can change the color. So if I click here to change the color, I can make this whatever color I want. So I chose white for mine. You can also put a stroke on it if you want to, over here. Okay, so once I'm done, I'm going to go off of my text tool and go back to my selection tool. I'm going to click on here, and now I can move this anywhere I want in the composition within my 1080 by 1080 square. Notice it also shows up down here as a text layer, a separate text layer. It has given it a 9. I think it's trying to be intuitive. Where I had 8 on this one, it made this one 9. But I could always go back and rename that whatever I want. So I am going to delete this layer because I don't need that. And let's look at outdoor activities. So again, I'm going to go back to my text tool, and I'm going to click, make sure none of my other layers are selected. Click, and I'm going to put this box over here. Notice that it's typing based on what I put in before. So I'm going to Command A to select all my type in there, and I can reduce that down. until I kind of get what I want, something about that size. And this is still Avenir black. Notice that I did positively kern this out a little bit. So you can use this over here. You could use the slider if you want. And you can pull that in and out. I put too much on there. I would suggest that whatever you do for one, you try to be consistent across everything. These are a little bit more open with positive kerning than this one. So I think that's okay, but try to keep them so they're fairly close. Now you might notice here that I did this on purpose where I made both of these words the same width. That was just kind of my design style. So this is actually a little bit smaller, the type size is, but it still fits in there. So the kerning's about the same. It was just a design decision I made. Okay, so if I want to close this box up a little bit to keep things neat, I can certainly grab this box and move things up here. And go back to my selection tool, and now I can put this wherever I want it. All right, so since I don't need this right now, I'm going to get rid of this as well because I already have one, outdoor activities. So you can see each of these, if I select them, each of these is on their own layer. 8 is on its own layer, outdoor activities on its own layer, to improve your health on its own layer. And then I have shape layers, one with the line here, one with the line here. I should probably move these to put this one, which is the top line, on the top layer. I tend to build my files where it's what I see first comes first, and then as I progress down, that's what comes next in the timeline and in the video. So you decide how you want to do it, but that's how I prefer to do it. I have another solid orange gradient here. So the way I made that solid orange gradient, excuse me, is I just drew a box. So up here in my tools, I'm going to choose the rectangle tool, and making sure I don't have any layers selected, I'm going to draw a rectangle. And you will notice that, lo and behold, when I draw this, it creates a separate layer that is a shape layer with my controls for my rectangle right down here. So now the color for this rectangle, let's go back up to our toolbar. Right here it gives me the fill and the stroke. So I see I have kind of a brown. I'm going to click on my color, and you can see that I can fill this with really any color that I want. If I have a brand color and I have the hexadecimal color or the web color, I can put that in here. If I have the RGB color, I can put that in there as well. So let's make it something else. If I want it to be that orange color, I can click on my eyedropper and click up here, and then I can select that too. Sorry, I have something going on here. Okay, so I've made that orange because I sampled this orange. Let's click OK. Now you'll notice that it appears to be transparent too. There are two controls here for fill. One gives you the color, and the second one, when you click the word fill, now it gives you these other options. So you could put a gradient in there, a radial gradient, a solid color. You could do blending modes like you see in Photoshop or in Illustrator, where you can multiply, darken it, screen it. I can also reduce the opacity. So you can see I've reduced the opacity here. And to change that, I can just use my slider here if I want, make it 100%, or I can take it way down. So you have a preview to turn on and off as well. So you can see in the rectangle that I drew here, I wanted to gradiate this down here and have a little bit of a gradient to blend into the sky of the video. So what I did is I simply selected this, the linear gradient, and you can see it automatically builds that gradient. Now it's going the wrong way. So you see, well, I don't have those fancy controls like I have in Photoshop and Illustrator where I can just type in the degree. So what I have to do instead is I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to go up here in my tools again, and I'm going to choose this rotate tool. I'm going to click here and just rotate it, hold my shift key down so that it snaps, and then go back to my selection tool. And now if I want, I can make this the size that I want it. So if I wanted this to be, I'll keep this up here so you can see it. I won't make it the full width, but now you see that I'm making this a rectangle with a gradient in it. So now if I want to go in here and adjust this again, I'm going to go back into the colors, and you see that in the colors now, since I put a gradient in here, it has replaced, or I'm sorry, it has added to the colors the gradient up here, the gradient control, the editor. So if I click here on the white, I can put maybe a red or something in here, and then it goes to black right now. I can change that black to white. Actually, I guess I want to go the other way, don't I? I want to make this, let's go from this orange here. I just selected the orange with my eyedropper. And then over here, I want this to go to white, so it blends. So in here, if I want to add another color, I just click anywhere on here, and then I can pull it. If I want that orange to be more orange at the top, the gradient itself, more orange, I just pull these little midpoints down and kind of just play around with this. So I get more orange here, and then just a quick little fade here. Now this is still fading to white down here, which I don't want. So if I click on this, I can change the opacity of this by clicking at the top. I can make this 0, and notice that now it blends from the orange down here. As it blends, it doesn't blend to white anymore. It blends into like basically an opaque color or see-through, and you can see the video through it. So I want to pull my orange over a little bit more. I'm going to do the same. Actually, you know, the problem I have here is this should be orange, right? So let me sample this color again. And this orange then should be a little bit closer. Okay, so you get the picture here. So now I have this orange blend. Now you'll notice that I think I also still have this. Let's see. Yeah, this is still at a reduced opacity when I click on the fill. A lot of things you have to remember in here. So I'm going to make this 100% opacity, and now you can see that full orange, and then at the very bottom it just blends into that. Now if you want to, you can play around with these little controls in here too. These kind of do the same thing, where I can pull that orange blend down if I put it almost to the bottom, and then pull this one down too, if you want more of a visual representation of what's happening in there. And then that is what I put behind my type, and then that blended down into the sky. Okay, so that's how I made that. It's on its own separate layer, and I'm going to type delete because I already have, as you can see, I already have that here. Okay, I guess that's kind of it. To make the lines here, I use the pen tool, and that's probably pretty common to most of you. Make sure that I don't have anything else selected. Oops, let's see, where is this? I think I made an extra piece here. I don't need that shape layer either. That was just the extra part of the rectangle. Okay, so with nothing else selected, I can click once here, hold my shift key down, click again, and I will draw a straight line. Now you'll notice that it automatically applied the same fill and stroke that I had from the previous rectangle I was drawing. So I can simply go click on the word fill and click none. And then there's no fill in there, and I can click on stroke, and now I can say what kind of stroke do I want? Solid color, the opacity normal, okay. And then in the little rectangle here, I can pick my color. I'll just make this red so you can see it. And then over here, I can make my stroke whatever size I want. So I think I made mine really, really small, just 1 or 2, I think. And then if I go back to my selection tool, you'll see that I have this stroke here, and that's how that fits up there. So if I want this to be white, I would just go in here and make it white, and then you'd see that it's white. I actually have mine on a reduced opacity. So under here, there are some more under content down here in your layers. You do have some more controls. If I go into stroke here, right down here, you can see that excuse me, you also have like different things, a little more adjustments here like you have in Illustrator. Let's just make this stroke, the width, let's make it a little bit heavier. I want you to see something here. In Illustrator, you can have like a butt end cap here, and that's right down here. Or if you want to round it, I think they look a little bit nicer. You can round them as well, and other things you can adjust in here too. So just go into stroke to do that. Okay. Well, let's go out of here. That's how we make the paths. Oh, the other thing I guess I did was when I made these two, let me get this out of here. When I made these two paths, I only made one and then I duplicated it so I didn't have to draw two of them. So let's just pretend I want two of these right here. All I have to do is go up here under Edit, Duplicate, or you can do Command D as well. You'll notice down here when I hit Command D, with this selected, hit Command D, select the layer, it'll just make a new layer, and now I have another one of these. I can do that as many times as I want to duplicate layers. If I want to duplicate multiple layers, I just select all those layers and hit Command D, and it'll make a duplicate of all of them. Back out of both of those because I don't want that. I'm hitting Command Z to go back there. All right, so I'm going to delete that layer as well. So really, that's all you see in here. You see these 1, 2, 3 text boxes, these 2 lines that I drew, and the gradient with the orange in the top that I adjusted, and then you have the video in the background. That's all this is. So when it plays through, oops, let's just play it through here. See how it sounds like your piano's kind of broke there? That's just because as you try to scrub through here and play it, it takes a little while sometimes for it to process. So sometimes if you see the full green line, then you can go back and do it again. Okay, so you see in the very, very beginning, I have 8 outdoor activities. That's just on, visible all the time. But just about a second in, I have the subhead to improve your health fade in just a little bit. I wanted just to give this, I don't want to have everything up right away is basically what I'm saying. So I'm going to progress through this and make that fade in. So the simple way to make that fade in is I'm going to go to my to improve your health layer here. I'm going to expand that layer, and I'm going to go into transform. They give you a transform on pretty much every layer. And the transform usually includes the defaults, anchor point, position, scale, rotation. And opacity down here is where I find where I can fade something in and then fade it back out. Because you'll notice that as I scrub along here, as soon as we hit these keyframes right here, it starts to fade in. And then it stays at 100% opacity, and then at the very end, everything at the same time fades out. So these 2 keyframes, along with everyone else having a keyframe in the orange layer here, everything else fades out. And then you see just a little bit of an overlap here. That overlap, which is only about a second, it has everything else in the second layer visible. I should say the second scene, sorry. So here, this is my second scene right here, which is yellow, which is the walking. There's a little bit of a 1 second overlap so that when this one fades out, this one is already visible. This is when it becomes visible, is when you see the color bars here. And then it fades the top one out and just shows the one on the bottom. And then the one on the bottom, the video is automatically there, along with this little drawn shape that I had just to make it kind of a cool shape. And then the type fades in for both, and then the type moves to the right. Notice how walking moves a little bit slower, and then the subhead moves a little bit faster. I did that on purpose. And then also the line comes in from the other side. So we have just a little bit of motion. You don't want to have a whole bunch of rocket zooming and flashing and fireworks and stuff. You'll lose people, and you'll lose their ability to get your message and read your message and your words and look at the video. So don't go overboard with this. You'll notice all of these are consistent too. The top one moves a little bit, the bottom one moves a little bit faster, and the line comes in from the right. Okay, so this transition, how do we make these transitions in here? Well, let's show that. Because once you learn how to transition one thing here, you'll be able to do all of them. And as a matter of fact, that's what I did, is once I got one of these done, like the yellow here, I just took all 5 of these layers, Command D to duplicate it, moved them over, and then swapped out the video, changed the text, and the motion and stuff was already in there. You only have to do it once, and then you just tweak it for your next one. Okay, so a simple fade here. If you look at the opacity, I am just going to, I'll put my timeline indicator kind of right here so I remember where they went. So I'm just going to grab all these by selecting them. It turns them blue. I'm just going to type delete. So I've just taken all of my transitions and my fade in out. So I'll rebuild them for you. All right, so in the very beginning, you'll probably see your type is just like this. When you draw your type and it's set up in here, so it's at 100%. But what I want to do is I want to set a keyframe here to start it at 0% opacity, because I want it to start at 0 and then fade in. So the way you work these transitions like this is to start any kind of an action down here, you click the little stopwatch here, okay? So I click that, it automatically adds a time frame here, and it says, all right, so on the timeline, or a keyframe, on the timeline, what do I want this keyframe to do? And for me, I want this to be at 0%. So I click here and I drag it all the way down to 0, and it disappears. Now I move my timeline indicator over just a couple of seconds here. There's no magic to this, but I usually give it maybe a second or two to fade in so it's not too fast. And then what I do is I can either click here and it'll add another keyframe, or if I just make my transition and put this up to 100, it will add one for me. Just to keep things simple, why don't we just practice clicking here to add a keyframe. Okay, so right now this keyframe is still at 0%. I'm going to bump it all the way up to 100. And now this keyframe is set to 100. If I go back here, by the way, see how I'm snapping to this? I hold my shift key down to snap to those keyframes. And I click on this to make it blue. This one is at 0. So this one's at 0, this one's at 100. Now if I transition between these two or scrub through them, you'll see that that is my transition. It fades in. All right, so with this one set to 100, I'm going to go over here because this is going to be my fade out. And I'm going to leave this at 100 and just click to add another keyframe. I want it at 100, and then move this over to the end. And now I'm going to add a 4th keyframe, but drop this one down to 0. You can also click on here if you want to type it in if you're having any trouble with the slider. So now if we watch, what happens is it fades in from 0 to 100, stays at 100% opacity, and then slowly fades out with everything else to go into the next scene. That's it. That's basically all you have to do. If you want to move these around, you can select one of them, move it around. So now my fade would only stay 100% for like here, and it would slowly fade out. If I want to speed it up and I wanted it to come really, really close over here, then that fade would go really quick at the end. So I can move these around. I can move 2 of them, 1 of them, as many as I want. Okay. Let me move these back here. Using my shift key, I snap to that. Okay. So let's move on. I'm going to close this up. And the next thing we want to do is I want to show you how I made this little vector drawing right here. Because that was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to have kind of a opacity transition in a couple of layers, and I wanted this swoop in here just to soften the feel of everything. Okay, so how I did that is I'm going to deselect everything, and I'm going to choose my rectangle tool. and I want to draw a rectangle. I have it go just a little bit outside my box here. So I'll just drag these out just a little bit. By the way, you can also nudge this with your arrow keys, up or down if you want to. I'm going to open this up so you can really see what I'm doing here. Okay, so this gave me a new rectangle. It's right here at the top. And let me make that rectangle a color here by clicking on my fill. And let's make it something that we can see over top of everything else. Let's make it this blue here. Okay, so a rectangle is not a drawing in vector. Your first thought might be like, okay, if I want to draw that and put a swoop in here, I'll grab my pen tool. Notice I also have like I can add a point, subtract a point. A lot of these are the same things you see when you draw with a pen tool in Illustrator or in Photoshop. But this is not a path right now. So in order to make it a path, we have to go down and select the layer. Okay. Oops, how about that? Select. I'm going to deselect everything just so we can see we're selecting this layer. And then I'm going to control or right click on it. And then see if I can remember where this is in here. I want to convert it to a Bezier path right here. So what am I doing wrong here? Let's go through here. If I choose my stroke, no, my path, yes. So here, all right, I'm doing a little bit of teaching here too, but notice if I go down here, this shows me the stroke controls down here. This shows me the rectangle path down here. So if I want to just adjust this path, I select this, not the main layer, I right click on it, or control click, and convert to a Bezier path. So that will, it doesn't seem like it does a lot, but it made it into that path. Okay, so now if I click on the path, and I go up here to my pen tool, I can, lo and behold, click, and I can add a path to it now. I'm sorry, add a point to it now. And then if I go up here, and I convert that, click on it, now I can put handles on that, stretch them out a little bit here. And now with my direct select tool, I can click on this point over here, and using just my arrow keys, I can nudge that down. I'm going to move this one. I can just move it freely like this too. Nudge that down, click on this one. I'm going to hold my shift key down so it doesn't move. And I'm going to kind of, you'll see where I'm matching the path down below here a little bit. This is kind of where I have it. And I can adjust this, stretch these out so it's a little bit smoother. Okay, so now I have a path. This one probably could come down just a little bit too. So now I have my fairly smooth curve on here. I'm going to click off of everything. Notice, by the way, you have to remember, if you're clicking up here and you can't get a hold of that individual path, you have to expand this, the contents, expand the rectangle, and then go into the path to select on that. And then you'll have this control of these individual points. Not stroke, not the fill, not the rectangle, not the shape, but the path is what gives you these controls. Okay, so I'm going to pull this down just a little bit. Okay, so now I have my solid blue. So all that's really left is I want to, let's close up this layer. I want to duplicate this layer, Command D. Now I have another layer, and I'm going to just use my arrow keys to nudge that up. And I'm going to move this one below the other one so it's behind it. So now this shape is behind the shape that's a little bit lower. And I'm going to reduce the opacity on here. And you will see that that blue becomes opaque. Let me turn off Yeah, let me turn off these layers here, the yellow. There, now you can see that that blue has become opaque in here. So if I click on this one, I can move that up a little bit or down. You can see this is the blue layer on the front. Notice that I have the blue layer just coming up over top right here of the video. Okay, and then I have the layer behind it. I can just go over here and select that layer if I want. And this layer is the opacity layer. So you can see that's the opacity layer here. So these edges, this one needs to come up a little bit, and this one down here needs to come down a little bit, just to make things kind of nice and tidy. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open this up, go to my contents, go to my rectangle, go to the path again, and then that gives me control over these. So I'm going to pull this one up a little bit, because that's how I like it, and adjust the handle a little bit here, and then I'm going to click once here, hold my shift key down, click here. Now I have both of these selected because they're solid and not open like this. I'm just going to use my arrow keys to nudge that down. If I use my shift arrow keys, it'll go even farther. So I'm going to nudge that down. The only reason I'm really doing this is because I like things to be kind of nice and neat, and I want these boxes to be about the same size at the bottom. So there, that's it. I have the opacity layer here. And this is the separate one that has opacity on it. And I can always go back in and adjust that if I want and say, 60 is not enough, or 60 is too much. I want it to be more opaque. I can do that, and then I can just move it back down here. And the same thing goes for the foreground. If I wanted to change this color, I could make this a totally different color if I wanted to. Okay, so that's how I built these. I am going to delete both of these though, these two layers, because we don't need those anymore. And we have our other two down here that we used. So you can see how I made these. Okay, so let's see. Next, what we want to do is, you already learned how to set your type, and we already learned how to build these. I have one text box here because I want to animate these independently of each other, and I have another text box here. So why don't we go down here and I'll show you how to make these move slowly. So if I open up my transform, I'm going to zoom in. See, I'm going to zoom in on this just a little bit. My space bar lets me kind of grab and drag here so you can see this. Okay, so in here you can see the opacity changes are the same as what we did for the first one. This comes in, and I'm on walking layer right now. This fades in first. Okay, and then over here it fades out with everything else. But if you notice up here for position, I have the position starting, even though it's hidden and it's not fading in yet. Over here with this little keyframe here, I have the type positioned way over here. And then at this position, you can see a little bit of the distance here. This little line shows me, as I scrub through here, the type moves along this little distance path here between these two keyframes until it gets to the other side. So that's how it's done. So let me kind of show you how that works. So I know where my position is right here. Let me just delete these two. Okay, so I have no keyframes here in my position. I position it in my first position first, and then I click the stopwatch. That sets my first position being right here. Then I simply go over here, kind of where I had it. I think I had it somewhere over here. And for my second position, I'm going to set another keyframe here. And then while that is still selected, I'm going to go up here with my selection tool and just move it over a little bit. And you can see it's building that distance right there between it. Now what this does is this transition changes the opacity at the same time that the position transition right here moves it. So here it starts to move, you can see, before it even fades in. So now as it fades in, it's moving already. So as it fades in, it moves, and you can see that it's progressing along that distance until it gets to the end, and then it fades back out. So if I would ever want to change this distance, I just click on this second one, I go up here and adjust the position again. If I move it way over here, you see this is the long transition it has to go. So now you'll see that it's going to move faster because in the same amount of time, it has to travel a longer distance. So I didn't want that. I wanted walking to move slower than the type at the bottom. I just thought that was a better look. So to do that then on this one, I simply will move that back so that this is shorter than if I go down here to heart healthy. This is mild and heart healthy. This is a lot longer. So since this has to travel a longer distance in the same amount of time, this one moves faster. Okay, and same with the line. If I look at the shape layer here, it's under transform. Same thing. This fades in, fades out, and then it has to go through the position change. So this one is fairly long too, so that it goes in kind of fast. I wanted walking to be the thing that moves the slowest, and then mild and heart healthy went a little bit faster. Just when I was reading it, I thought that my eyes followed it better that way. That's it with this. And let's see, what else do we need to know before you can build this whole thing? Really, I know there's a lot of ways to make your type zoom and have fireworks and crackle and break up and stuff. Just like with your PowerPoint slides, I would really be cautious about doing too much to it because it takes away from the message and the delivery of the message. Okay? One other thing I guess I want to show you here before we wrap up and I show you how to render this is, I guess we should do the sound first. Sorry, just one sec. So with walking here, you can see that I have added a layer style to it with an outer glow. And I like the feel of that. It just had a very subtle outer glow on that. So the way I did that was with the outer glow here, I went into, I just select the layer first. So let's say nothing is selected here. I select the layer, which is the type, control click on that, and go down to layer styles, just like you're used to in Photoshop. Or you could also do it in Illustrator, InDesign, and go down here to outer glow. You have all the same things. You can put a stroke on here, you can do bevel and emboss, drop shadow, you can pull them off, show them. So I just go in here to drop shadow, and then, well, I guess I can just show you this. I did outer glow, sorry. Outer glow, and now I doubled it up, so I don't want that, so I'm gonna go back in here. But once I added outer glow, what it does is it puts a separate control layer down here. You open it up and you have everything that you're used to seeing. Multiply, the opacity, and you can do noise if you want. That looks kind of ugly some places. You can make it single color, or if you want to do a gradient, you can. You can change the color right here or sample a color, and the smoothness, everything you're kind of used to here. I usually just mess around with the opacity and the size. So you can see the size I have at 21, but I could make it a lot larger if I wanted to, or a little bit smaller. I wanted it to be a little bit softer, and that's where I came up with 21. Okay, so that's how you do that, and then you always have this on here. Again, when I was doing this, I first did all of my animations, all of my opacity changes, all of the video, dropping the video in, animating the lines, putting on the drop shadows, everything to just this walking scene. And then I duplicated it, and then you just move them around. Because I can select all of these, and to get this overlap and stuff, once I have all of these layers selected, I can click in here, and I can move this wherever I want. If I wanted to switch scenes, I could just take all of these and move them below the green one and move this one over, move this one over. So that is usually the best way to do it, so you don't have to do all this extra work. Okay, so remember again, if you want to change the visibility of these, or if you wanted to extend this scene, I can just pull this out. If I select all the layers, I can do them all at the same time, and I would make this visible for a longer amount of time. A nice quick key for this that I found is if I have my timeline indicator, like say over here, and I want this to jump over here, you just type Option, left or right bracket. For this one, it would be the right bracket, it would jump over here. And if you wanted to do the other side, it would be Option, left bracket. And you'll go right to that current timeline indicator. You can pull it out this way too, but it's a little less accurate. Okay, one other little nuance here I guess I should show you is this video right here. This is the bike riding video. You can see that the bike riding video was a lot longer, and I only wanted like my scenes to be about 5 seconds long. So I just found a spot that I wanted in the bike video right here, and I just used that small portion of it. So this one, the bike video actually goes a lot longer. So if you can see here, if I turn all these other layers off before it, the bike video starts way back here, and then it plays through. I guess I'd have to turn the rest of these. Oh, I have my, sorry, I have it fading out here. Let's just say it didn't fade out. The bike video, I still have that fading out, don't I? I'm probably trying to do too much here and show you too much, but if I would just get rid of these, let's turn the opacity to 100. The bike video starts way back here, but this is where I have it visible. And then they actually keep, sorry, it's not scrubbing very well here. They keep writing. They keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. I didn't really need all of that. I actually wanted them closer. So I just put my timeline indicator right here with the selected Option, right bracket on this side, and then over here, Option, left bracket, and it trimmed that down. So it's, well, it didn't technically trim it. It just made only parts of the video visible here. All right, so let me see if I can go back through with Command Z and fix all my stuff here. One more. There we go. All right. So now we have a nice transition from here to here. So the rest of these, it's basically the same thing. You just go through and copy it and then swap out the video. And swapping the video is pretty simple. If I want this video right here, which is gardening, I just delete this video and drag a new video down here and replace it. And just put it in the same spot. So that's pretty simple. Just like if I were to move this bike riding one down here, when I move these, they go along with a different scene. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you here would be the sound. The sound is actually a really simple process. And you'll see my sound down here. I pulled in my bend sound. This was the song. The song itself was already like 3 minutes, and I only needed, mine was 44 seconds. So at 44 seconds, I had plenty of music. So you really just drop it in. Your audio levels sit at 0. And it plays the entire time along here. What I wanted to show is at the very end, I will usually fade the music out. So if you go into the waveform here, and you can see the waveform, what it looks like. But what you want is, right in the waveform, go to audio levels. You can put keyframes in here too, and change the audio levels. So don't worry too much about this one right here. I'll tell you just quickly, you probably won't need to do this, but the babbling brook, the running stream, the audio wasn't loud enough in the video for anybody to hear. So I went out and I found a separate babbling brook kind of running stream sound on this orange free sounds. And I just fade out my music for this little bit of time here, right in the babbling brook here. And I fade in that the better quality sound with the stream right here. I fade that in, and then I just fade out the stream sound and go back into the music here. You probably saw that in the video. So you probably won't have to do it, but if you do, you know how to do it. But what I'll do is at the very, very end, I'll set a keyframe here, and 0 decibels is okay. You might think that that's where you can't hear anything, but 0 decibels in After Effects is actually like a nice quiet conversation in a room. That's the level. So what absolute 0 for sound is in After Effects is if I go over to the very end and I set another keyframe, that is negative 44 decibels. That would be no sound in After Effects. So 0 is a nice quiet conversation in a room, and that's where I have basically all my other sound set at 0. But at the very end, I fade it from 0, which is like the quiet conversation sound or the normal sound. I fade it down to negative 44 decibels, and that will fade the music out at the end, which I think is a good practice. It just kind of doesn't end abruptly then. All right, so that's kind of all I think you need to know to make something like this. There's a million other things you can learn about After Effects, but remember what we're after here is we're after our article that helps us improve our health, and we animate some type to go along with it to show the skills of animating typography along with it. I did put at the very end, I did put my citation, a prescription for better health, and you can use a citation machine website. I have a link to that to make your citation here, because you should find a decent article to get your information. Okay, so when everything is all done here, I make sure I'm saving along the way, and I can basically just close this. I'm not going to save it because I've done other things. And then what you want to do is you want to open this Adobe Media Encoder. And what Media Encoder does is it will take your After Effects project and make it into an MP4 so that you can use it and upload it to YouTube, to social media, to websites, really anywhere. Behance for your portfolio. So this is the rendering software. The reason that Media Encoder is separate from After Effects is because if you do something that's really long, maybe you have like a movie or you have a 5-minute video or a 20-minute video or something you want to render, well, Media Encoder is separate because it can be rendering your final video, and it might take 2 hours to render your final video, and you can still be going back and working on After Effects and remaining productive in your job. So this is a pretty simple process. I have right now, this is my my video, my After Effects project, Craig Typography video. I'm going to, with this window open, I'm going to click and drag from here real quick. You notice that a little blue box pops up. Drop here to add as a separate source. I will drop that in. It'll take a little while to process, so be patient. So it's processing that, making sure it has all of the support files and gathers your support files, and then what happens is your composition pops up. And I have the composition, which I named Better Health, Get Outdoors. I will select that, click OK. And now you see that that has added that here. Let me clean this up a little bit here. You'll see that that has added that to the queue here. This is the queue. So what I want to do first is, if you don't have H264 up here, click on this. Well, I must be a little bit slow today. Here, I'm sorry, click the little down arrow here, and you can just find it in here. What this is going to, in the simplest terms, H264 is going to make your MP4 file, which is the most common file that you want to upload to all of these different media services. Okay, next over here, I'm going to click on the type right here, and this is going to pull up a separate window where I want to enter in a few things. Okay, so this is the window. It pops up. It kind of shows you right in here. You can scrub through and you can see your video. Double check what's happening in here. But what I usually do is I just double check a few things. Here we're double checking that our format is the H.264. But right in here where it's the basic video settings, I want to scroll through those. And I want to double check that my width is right, where it's 1080 by 1080. My frame rate is 30. I want to click render at maximum depth. That will give me a nice high quality video. And then as I come down here, you're going to see this bitrate settings. And I want to go, this is variable bitrate, either 1 pass or 2 passes. I want the 2 pass, and I'm going to set my first one, click on it and do 4. My second one, 8. These settings basically come from 4 and 8, what most social media sites and media sites want as far as the bitrate. So just reading a lot of different articles and stuff, I found that this is pretty common to do between 4 and 8. This one is a little bit different, where the 2-pass variable bitrate, what this is doing is it's trying to balance quality with like streaming speed. So when we build this final MP4 file, it's going to take 2 passes through, and it's going to look at all of our imagery. So here's an example. Right now, the cow in the tree or my crisp type up here, I want to have a lot of quality, and this is going to take up a little more time to render this, and I don't want to have a whole bunch of pixels and stuff in here. I want this to be smooth. So 1 pass is going to determine that, well, these areas need to have a little more I guess like file size devoted to them to make sure that this stays nice and crisp when there's a clean transition. But there are some areas, and they'll do that with a 2nd pass, it'll determine that this orange up here, that orange is just one solid color. It doesn't have any transitions. It doesn't have to have a whole bunch of pixels and stuff devoted to it. So that it'll basically speed up and say we can deliver this part really, really fast. This part we need to render a little bit slower with more information when it makes that MP4. So the 2-pass does a better job of delivering a crisp, clean file with good quality, but at a quick speed, because it doesn't give it all the same attention to detail. Okay, so the last thing we'll do is down at the bottom, use maximum render quality. That'll give us a nice clean file. Then just click OK. Now, this is all you have to do. Click green arrow, and it will start to render it. You can see down here that I have about a 44-second video. So this is going to go pretty fast. But what it's doing now is it's converting my .aep or my After Effects project into that final MP4 video. So this won't take too long, so I'll let this render and we'll look at the final piece. You can see that it has some of the basics down here. The bit rate is variable bit rate because it might go a little bit faster at some times because it's processing just that simple flat orange. It might go a little bit slower at some times because it has to render in more of the detail or the smooth transitions. So it's going from 4 to 8, and the video is 1080 by 1080, 30 frames per second. And you see it's 44 seconds, the final video. So it looks like there's about a minute remaining here. Let's just hold out, and I want you to see the whole thing here so you can see that sometimes this takes a little bit longer. Sometimes this depends on your computer processing power too. I have a pretty powerful iMac at home, and it processes pretty quickly. If I do some of these at the college, sometimes where I work, the iMacs are a little bit slower. It will take sometimes twice as long to do it. So right now I could be going back into After Effects as I'm waiting for this to render and cleaning things up, or I could just be staying productive. Your boss really isn't going to want you to, or if you're a self-employed person, being your own boss, isn't going to want you to just sit and watch this render. You should go back and get some work done. So here you can see it goes a little bit faster through parts of it, less than a minute left here. You can see that blue bar if you want to scrub through the video until you see the end of the blue bar. That's fine with me. It's important for me though that you see what happens throughout the whole process, because when this is done rendering, basically nothing happens. This window just stays the same, and the bottom part here will all go away, and you'll just have your leftover file up here. All right, so it's just wrapping it up, making our nice clean MP4 video, and then when it's done, this goes away and this sits up here. So if you want, you can just close Media Encoder. Just to keep things clean, I will usually take this and delete it. And you can just hit delete. Yes, that's okay. Quit Media Encoder. And then you will notice here, this is the newer one. Notice this one I changed the lowercase, so I know this is the newer one, and it was made today at 11:14. So this is my new MP4 video right here. On the Mac, I can simply click once on that and hit my spacebar, and it will preview it for me. All right, and you can hear the sound kind of fade out at the end. You can see where I faded out the music and put that kind of babbling brook sound in there. And then this is what I ended up with. So one thing that I always do is when you render it like this, watch things and just make sure that, if you see something skip or a letter disappears, or you see part of your video show up in here when you didn't put the video far enough down or didn't cover it, or you don't like the color, you don't like the opacity. Just small things. Just look through the whole thing and fix all those little minor things if you need to. Go back into After Effects and re-render it. But I like the way this turned out. I think it looks good. All the borders are nice and clean around it. The transitions work. Probably one of the most important things I do is when I play it through the final render, I just make sure that I can read everything and look at the video within that 4.5 to 5 seconds, and make sure that it would work for the viewer. Okay, so that's it. Do any tweaks you need to and re-render if you want to, but now you have your final MP4 video, and this is what you will need to upload. What a lot of people will do, including myself, is upload it to my YouTube account, and then it seems to be a lot easier from there to take the sharing URL from YouTube and upload that to Behance or upload that to other places, and then they'll play it and draw it from YouTube. YouTube does a nice job of being able to deliver it, put the player in there and deliver a high quality version or a low quality version, whatever people need. And you kind of just leave the streaming up to them. If you don't like that, you can still do it on your own or upload it to other streaming services too. Rumble is another popular one. There's a bunch of them out there. YouTube is still probably the most popular. All right, though, we will leave our session there, class. Thank you very much. And let me know if you have questions.